Steve Jobs was born on February 24, 1955 in San Francisco, California. His biological parents were Joanne Schiebel and Abdul Fattah Jandali, but they were not married. They made the difficult decision to give Steve up for adoption when he was just a baby. A kind couple named Paul and Clara Jobs decided to adopt Steve. They promised to provide him with a good education and a loving home. Steve grew up in a small town called Mountain View, California. His adoptive parents, Paul and Clara, were very supportive. Paul, Steve's father, worked as a mechanic and was very skilled with his hands. Paul enjoyed teaching Steve how to fix things around the house and how to build things in the garage. These early lessons were important because they helped shape Steve's love for working with technology and gadgets. He learned to be creative and solve problems at a very young age. Even though Steve was very curious, he did not always get along with school. He loved learning, but the way school was taught didn't always keep him interested. He often felt bored in class. Sometimes he played pranks on his classmates or teachers to make the day go faster. Despite this, his teachers could see that Steve was very smart and had great potential. They tried to encourage him and find ways to keep him challenged. One of the first things that sparked Steve's interest in technology was a computer kit called Heathkit. When Steve was just 12 years old, his parents bought him this kit. It was not a ready-to-use computer. Instead, it was a set of parts that Steve had to put together himself. Steve spent hours working with the kit, and this was his first introduction to computers. He enjoyed the challenge of building something from scratch, and quickly realized that computers fascinated him. Aside from his interest in electronics, Steve also developed a love for calligraphy, which would later influence Apple's design. While still in high school, Steve took a calligraphy class at a local college. He learned about different fonts and the beauty of writing. This class taught Steve how important it was for technology to not only work well, but also look beautiful and simple to use. This experience in calligraphy would shape how he thought about the design of Apple products in the future. Steve's adoptive parents were very supportive of his interests. They encouraged him to learn and explore new things. They bought him books, tools, and even took him to different classes to help him grow. This support from his parents was very important in Steve's early years, and it played a big part in his later success. As Steve grew older, his curiosity about the world continued to grow. He loved learning about how things worked and spent his free time tinkering with electronics and building new things. His parents' encouragement and his own passion for learning helped Steve build a foundation that would lead to his future as one of the most successful and influential people in technology. In this part of his life, we learned about Steve's early years and how his adoptive parents, especially his father, played a key role in shaping his curiosity and skills. We also saw how Steve's interest in technology and calligraphy began to form, setting the stage for what he would accomplish later in life. Steve's childhood in Mountain View, along with the support of his parents, would later help him overcome many challenges as he worked toward his dreams. Steve Jobs attended Homestead High School in Cupertino, California, where he continued to explore his love for technology. It was during this time that he met a very important person who would become a key part of his future: Steve Wozniak. Wozniak, a talented engineer, shared Steve Jobs' passion for electronics and computers. The two of them quickly became friends and began spending time together, working on different projects and learning from each other. At Homestead High, Steve Jobs still had trouble with the traditional school system. While he was very bright, he didn't always enjoy the lessons and rules at school. He found many of the classes boring, and this led him to act out in class. He would sometimes play pranks on his classmates and teachers. Despite this, his teachers could see that he had great potential. They knew he was very intelligent, even if he didn't always show it in the classroom. Steve's time in high school was not just about causing trouble. It was also about growing his skills. He joined the school's electronics club, where he had the chance to work on more technology projects. This was a great place for Steve to connect with like-minded students who shared his interest in electronics. He spent a lot of time building gadgets, fixing things, and learning more about the world of technology. This was the beginning of his deep dive into the tech world. While Steve loved working with electronics, he also had other interests. One of these interests was calligraphy. Steve took a calligraphy class at a local college where he learned about different fonts and how writing could be beautiful. This experience would later be very important when Steve Jobs worked on designing Apple products. The clean, simple fonts that he admired in his calligraphy class would eventually influence the design of Apple's computers. In high school, Steve Jobs' world changed when he met Steve Wozniak. Wozniak was older than Steve, but the two of them connected immediately. Wozniak was a brilliant engineer and loved to build things, just like Steve. Together, they worked on creating gadgets and learning more about technology. They shared a deep passion for computers and electronics, and their friendship would lay the foundation for something big in the future. Wozniak was not just a friend to Steve, he was also a teacher. Wozniak taught Steve a lot about how computers worked, how to build them, and how to think about technology in new ways. Wozniak's engineering skills, combined with Steve Jobs' creative thinking, made them an amazing team. They often spent long hours together, working on new ideas and discussing the possibilities of technology. In high school, Steve Jobs was still growing and figuring out what he wanted to do with his life. He didn't always follow the rules, but he knew that he loved technology. His time at Homestead High School, and especially his friendship with Steve Wozniak, played an important role in shaping his future. Wozniak introduced Steve to the world of engineering, and together they dreamed about creating something special in the tech world. After high school, Steve Jobs took a job at Atari, a company that made video games. This job allowed him to learn more about the technology industry and gave him some hands-on experience. Even though Steve was still very young, he was beginning to understand what it would be like to work in the tech world. In this part of Steve Jobs' story, we saw how his time in high school helped shape who he would become. We learned about his friendship with Steve Wozniak and how their shared love of technology led them to explore new ideas and work on exciting projects together. We also saw how Steve's interest in calligraphy influenced his approach to design and how he combined his creative side with his technical skills. In the next part, we will learn about Steve Jobs' decision to drop out of college and how his experiences at Reed College would shape his future. After finishing high school, Steve Jobs decided to attend Reed College in Portland, Oregon. Reed College was known for its creative and open-minded environment. Steve thought that this school would be the perfect place for him to grow and learn in a different way. It was a small liberal arts college, and it allowed students to think independently and explore their interests. Steve was excited about the idea of attending a college that focused on creativity and personal growth, rather than strict rules and traditional education. However, college life was not as easy for Steve as he had imagined. The tuition fees at Reed College were very high, and Steve's parents, Paul and Clara Jobs, struggled to pay for it. After just 6 months at the college, Steve began to feel that attending school was not the right path for him. He did not want to put any more financial pressure on his parents, so he made the tough decision to drop out. This was a big step for Steve, but he believed that he could still learn important things outside of college. Although he dropped out of Reed College, Steve did not stop learning. He continued to attend classes that interested him. One of the most important classes he took was a calligraphy course. In this class, Steve learned about different fonts, the art of handwriting, and how beautiful writing could be. He became fascinated with calligraphy, and the knowledge he gained from this class would later play a huge role in the design of Apple products. Steve always believed that design should be simple, clean, and beautiful, and the calligraphy class helped him develop that philosophy. During his time at Reed, Steve also started to explore his spiritual side. He became very interested in Eastern philosophy and practices like meditation. Steve felt that he needed to understand more about life and its meaning. He decided to take a trip to India with a friend to learn about different cultures and religions. The trip to India was an eye-opening experience for Steve. He spent time in ashrams, met spiritual teachers, and learned about different ways of thinking. This journey had a lasting impact on Steve and helped him see the world in a new way. He became more focused on finding peace and clarity in his life, which later influenced his approach to business and innovation. After returning from India, Steve moved back to California. He reconnected with his old friend, Steve Wozniak, and started to get involved in the world of technology again. He attended meetings of a group called the Homebrew Computer Club, where many tech enthusiasts gathered to share ideas and learn from each other. It was at these meetings that Steve's passion for technology was reignited. He began to realize that his future lay in creating new products that could change the world. He started thinking about starting his own company with Wozniak. This idea would later lead to the creation of Apple. Steve's decision to drop out of college was a difficult one, but it allowed him to follow his own path. He understood that learning didn't always have to take place in a classroom. He believed that real learning came from experience, curiosity, and the willingness to explore new ideas. His time at Reed College helped him discover his love for calligraphy and sparked his interest in spirituality. But it was also during this time that he began to realize that he was ready to build something important in the tech world. In this part of Steve Jobs' story, we see how his time at Reed College influenced his future. Although he didn't complete his degree, the experiences he had during this time shaped his ideas and philosophy. His love for calligraphy and his spiritual journey helped him develop a deeper understanding of design and life. Steve's decision to drop out was not a failure, but rather a step toward his true calling. In the next part, we will learn how Steve and Wozniak took the next big step by starting Apple, a company that would change the world of technology forever. In 1976, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak decided to start their own company. They both shared a passion for technology, and together, they believed they could create something that would change the world. Their goal was to make personal computers that were not just for experts, but for everyone. They wanted computers to be easy to use and affordable for regular people. To start the company, they needed money. Steve Jobs made a decision that would help them begin their journey. He sold his Volkswagen van to raise funds. Steve Wozniak also sold his prized scientific calculator. With this money, they bought the parts they needed to build their first computer. They worked together in Steve Jobs' family garage in Mountain View, California. This was the beginning of Apple. The garage, though small and simple, became a place of big dreams. The two of them spent long hours building, designing, and testing their first computer. They named it the Apple I. The Apple I was not like the computers we know today. It was just a circuit board, meaning it didn't have a complete screen, keyboard, or other features. People who bought it had to connect it to a monitor and keyboard on their own. Despite its simplicity, the Apple I had something special. It was one of the first personal computers that ordinary people could use. It was affordable and could perform simple tasks, something many people had never experienced before. Steve Jobs and Wozniak saw the potential of the computer, but they knew they needed to do more to make it successful. To sell the Apple I, they went to a local computer store called Byte Shop. The owner of the store, Paul Terrell, agreed to buy 50 units. This was the beginning of Apple's journey, the sale of the Apple. I was a small success, but Steve Jobs had bigger plans. He knew that to really make a difference, they needed to create a more powerful and user-friendly computer. Steve Jobs encouraged Wozniak to design a new computer, one that was easier to use and could do even more. They worked together to create the Apple II, which was a huge improvement. The Apple II was a complete system. It came with a keyboard, a monitor, and was ready to use right out of the box. Unlike the Apple I, the Apple II was designed for people to use at home, in schools, or in businesses. It had color graphics and was much more powerful, making it a groundbreaking product. The Apple II was introduced in 1977 at the West Coast Computer Fair, a large event where many tech companies showed off their products. When the Apple II was displayed, people were amazed. It was a huge hit. The Apple II was the first personal computer that could be used by a wide audience. It was affordable, easy to use, and had great graphics. Because of these features, it sold very well. The success of the Apple II helped establish Apple as a leader in the technology industry. Steve Jobs and Wozniak's dream of creating personal computers for everyone was beginning to come true. The Apple II was only the start. It showed that their idea could work, and that people were interested in computers. They had made something that people could use and enjoy. The success of the Apple II helped Apple grow quickly, and soon, Apple became a well-known name in the computer world. In this part of the story, we learned about how Steve Jobs and Wozniak created Apple. They worked hard, sacrificed personal belongings, and spent long hours in a small garage. Together, they built the Apple I, which started the journey. However, it was the Apple II that really made Apple successful. The Apple II's user-friendly design and powerful features helped Apple become one of the leading companies in the tech world. As Apple continued to grow, Steve Jobs and Wozniak's vision for personal computers became clearer. They wanted to make technology that was not just for experts, but for everyone. The early success of Apple showed that their dream was possible. In the next part, we will see how Steve Jobs and Apple continued to face new challenges and reach new heights. In 1985, after a series of disagreements with the CEO, John Sculley, Steve Jobs was forced to leave Apple, the company he had co-founded. This was a difficult time for Steve, but it didn't stop him from moving forward. He left Apple and decided to focus on new projects, believing that his journey was not over yet. Steve Jobs went on to start 2 new companies after leaving Apple. The first was Next, a company focused on creating advanced computers for education and business. Next computers were powerful, but they were very expensive. They didn't sell well, and the company struggled to find a large market. However, the software that Next developed was very important. It became the foundation for the next big step in Steve's career. The second company Steve founded was Pixar. He bought Pixar from Lucasfilm, a company owned by George Lucas. Pixar started as a small company focused on developing computer animation technology. Under Steve's leadership, Pixar became a leader in the animation industry. It developed new technology that allowed filmmakers to create movies using computers instead of traditional animation. In 1995, Pixar released its first full-length film, Toy Story. The movie was a huge success and became the first computer-animated movie to be released in theaters. Toy Story changed the world of animation and made Pixar one of the most important companies in the entertainment industry. While Steve's time with Next and Pixar was successful, he never stopped thinking about Apple. He still cared about the company he had built and wanted to see it succeed. In 1996, Apple was struggling. The company was losing money, and its products were no longer popular. The board of directors at Apple realized that they needed help, so they decided to buy Next for $429 million. This decision brought Steve Jobs back to Apple. In 1997, Steve Jobs returned to Apple as an advisor and quickly became the company's interim CEO. He was determined to turn the company around. Steve knew that Apple needed a new direction, and he made some big changes. One of the first things he did was simplify Apple's product line. Before Steve's return, Apple was making many different products that confused customers. Steve decided to focus on a few key products. He also wanted to make Apple's products easier to use and more attractive. One of the first major products Steve introduced after returning was the iMac. The iMac was a colorful, all-in-one computer that combined the monitor, keyboard, and CPU in a single design. The iMac was a huge success. It helped to bring Apple back to life. The iMac's design was bold and different from other computers at the time, and it caught the attention of many people. The iMac helped to change the way people thought about personal computers. After the success of the iMac, Steve Jobs continued to push Apple forward. In 2001, Apple introduced the iPod, a portable music player that could store thousands of songs. The iPod revolutionized the way people listened to music. It was easy to use, had a sleek design, and allowed people to carry their entire music library in their pocket. The iPod's success helped Apple become a leader in the tech industry. The biggest revolution came in 2007, when Apple introduced the iPhone. The iPhone was a combination of a phone, a music player, and an internet device all in one. It had a touch screen, which was a new and innovative feature. The iPhone changed the smartphone industry forever. It set the standard for all smartphones that came after it. Under Steve Jobs' leadership, Apple became one of the most successful companies in the world. His focus on design, simplicity, and innovation helped Apple create products that were not only functional, but also beautiful. Apple's products were known for their user-friendly interfaces and sleek, modern designs. Steve Jobs passed away in 2011, but his legacy lives on. Apple continues to be one of the most valuable companies in the world. The products Steve Jobs created have changed the way we live, work, and communicate. The iPhone, iPad, Mac computers, and other Apple products are part of everyday life for millions of people around the world. Steve Jobs taught us that innovation is not just about making new technology. It's about creating something that improves people's lives and makes the world a better place. His legacy continues to inspire entrepreneurs, designers, and innovators everywhere. Steve Jobs may be gone, but the impact he made on the world will never be forgotten. Steve Jobs' story is one of passion, perseverance, and innovation. From his humble beginnings as an adopted child in San Francisco to his groundbreaking work in the world of technology, Steve's journey shows how following one's vision can lead to amazing success. He was not always on a smooth path. There were challenges and setbacks, but Steve's determination to change the world with his ideas kept him moving forward. Starting from his early years, Steve was a curious and creative person. He had a love for learning, but he didn't always fit in with traditional education. This led him to drop out of college and start his own journey in technology. Together with Steve Wozniak, he co-founded Apple in a garage, and they quickly made waves in the computer world with their innovative creations like the Apple I and Apple II. Their work didn't just revolutionize the computer industry, it changed how we interact with technology in our everyday lives. Steve's passion for beautiful design and simplicity drove the development of products that weren't just functional, but also visually appealing. From the iMac to the iPhone, Steve's focus on user-friendly design made Apple a leader in the tech industry. Even when Steve faced difficult times, such as being forced out of Apple, he never gave up. Instead, he used the time to grow, starting new projects like Next and Pixar, both of which went on to be incredibly successful. His return to Apple in 1997 marked the beginning of a new era for the company, where Apple became more innovative and influential than ever before. Steve Jobs' legacy continues to impact the world today. Apple's products are used by millions of people around the globe. Steve's vision of making technology accessible and beautiful still drives the company. His story teaches us many important lessons. One key lesson is the importance of believing in yourself, even when others don't understand your vision. Steve Jobs faced criticism and failure, but he kept moving forward with his ideas. Another lesson is the power of creativity and innovation. Steve Jobs didn't just create products. He created experiences that changed how people live and work. His ability to combine technology with design made his products unique and beloved by people worldwide. From Steve's story, we learn that success is not just about technical knowledge. It's about being passionate, determined, and creative. In today's world, these qualities are just as important as they were during Steve Jobs' time. Whether in business, education, or any other field, we can all learn from his approach to problem solving and creativity. It's important to stay focused on your goals, to innovate, and to always strive for excellence. In conclusion, Steve Jobs' life is a reminder that success often comes from following your dreams and not giving up, no matter how difficult the journey may be. His story encourages us to be bold, to take risks, and to trust our own ideas. If we apply these lessons to our own lives, we can make a difference in the world, just as Steve did. Congratulations to all of you for improving your English listening and comprehension skills by following Steve Jobs' story. By listening to this story, you have not only learned about an inspiring figure, but also practiced your English in an engaging and meaningful way. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to support us and help us create more inspiring content for you. We look forward to bringing you more exciting stories in the future. Keep learning and stay motivated.